Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into something really critical: the connection between laws, justice, and, well, people's lives. And we're going to do it by looking at one of the most heartbreaking industrial disasters in history, the Bhopal gas tragedy.
All right, so let's start with a really big question, something that affects all of us. Why do we even need laws to control how businesses operate? Markets are all about making a profit, right? And that's not a bad thing. It drives new ideas, new products. But if there are no rules, that drive for profit can sometimes lead to some pretty bad stuff. That's where governments step in with laws. They're there to put up guardrails to protect workers, consumers, and even other producers from getting the short end of the stick.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Without any rules, what's to stop a company from paying people almost nothing? Or using a cheaper, maybe even dangerous material to make something? Or just dumping their toxic waste wherever it's convenient? It's this tension, this push and pull. That's exactly why we have things like a minimum wage or safety standards. They're meant to be a baseline for social justice.
Okay, so we've got laws. Great. But as this story is about to show us, just having a law on the books is only half the battle. I mean, what good is a rule if nobody follows it? And that simple idea right there, that's what takes us from a classroom discussion to a real, devastating story about what's at stake when those laws fail. Because when enforcement fails, the consequences aren't just fines or a slap on the wrist. They can be absolutely catastrophic. Which brings us to the city of Bhopal in India. So picture this. It's December 2nd, 1984. A super toxic gas, methyl isocyanate, starts leaking from a pesticide plant owned by a company called Union Carbide. And for people like Aziza Sultan, whose words you see here, the world just turned into a nightmare in a matter of seconds. The immediate result was just staggering. More than 8,000 people were dead within just a few days. And that's not even counting the hundreds of thousands more who were seriously injured, many of them left with health problems that they are still dealing with today. Now, here's the part that's just so hard to wrap your head around. This wasn't some unavoidable act of God. It wasn't a freak accident. As we're about to see, this was the end result of a series of very specific, very deliberate choices. Yeah, the company, Union Carbide, made documented decisions to ignore critical safety measures, all to cut costs. They actively chose to put profit ahead of the lives of their workers and the people living right next door. And look at this. This really breaks it down. The team responsible for handling this insanely dangerous chemical cut in half. The safety training for the workers who were left slashed from a full 6 months down to just 2 weeks. And they even got rid of the night shift safety position, just gone. This right here is maybe the most shocking part. It's a tale of two plants. The Union Carbide plant back in the US, it had all the bells and whistles, computerized warning systems, the works. But the one in Bhopal, they were literally relying on workers to see or smell a leak. One had detailed emergency plans. The other had absolutely nothing. So you have to ask, why? Why the massive difference? Well, it's pretty clear. Companies came to India for things like cheaper labor, for sure. But here's the kicker. They also saw weaker safety laws, which were often not even enforced properly, as just another way to save money and pump up their profits. All right, so after a disaster this huge with such clear negligence, what happened next? What did justice even look like for the thousands of victims? Well, the legal fight was long. The Indian government went after them for $3 billion. But in the end, the company settled for just $470 million, a tiny fraction of the original amount. And it's a settlement that, to this day, survivors and activists call a total betrayal of justice. But out of all that horror, something did change. The tragedy was a massive wake-up call for India. It shoved the issue of environmental safety right into the spotlight and forced the government to create new, much stronger laws to hold polluters responsible. And this was a huge deal. It led to a landmark legal ruling. India's Supreme Court basically said that the right to life, which is guaranteed in the Constitution, isn't just about not being killed. It also means you have a fundamental right to live in a healthy environment. Clean air and clean water became a constitutional right. Okay, let's bring this into the present. That legal victory was a big step, but how have things played out since then? The tough truth is, even though the laws got better on paper, a lot of the same old problems that caused the disaster in the first place are
well, they're still around. I mean, think about this. Decades later, the plant site in Bhopal is still a toxic mess, poisoning the groundwater for people who live there. The man who was chairman of the company back then never faced trial. And maybe the most worrying thing of all, we still see this pattern of dangerous industries moving to countries with weaker laws. It's like the risk is just being exported to new communities.
So what's the big takeaway here? The story of Bhopal is a powerful and painful reminder that just having a law written down means nothing. A law is a promise of safety, of justice. But for that promise to mean anything, it has to be enforced. And that takes constant pressure, constant vigilance from ordinary people demanding that everyone, no matter how powerful, is held accountable.